aversion to this exotic food. Either they don't like the look of it, or they don't like that it grows in manure, or they don't like the taste of it. But those who accept it as a dietary item will be more successful at getting food, and consequently more successful at raising their offspring to sexual maturity. And that's the name of the game in Darwinian evolution. You must raise your offspring to sexual maturity. Then the genes flow forward. If you fail in that, you get an F in the evolution game. Well, okay, so visual acuity, that's all very fine. But psilocybin has other properties which build on that initial pharmacological peculiarity. If you take slightly larger doses of psilocybin, and this is typical of many indoles, you get, with many of which are hallucinogens, you get what is called CNS arousal, central nervous system arousal. You all know this feeling. It's the feeling of 2 double cappuccinos in short order. It's that you do not sleep, you are very restless, you are very alert, your attention is scanning, and in highly sexed animals like primates, arousal means exactly what it sounds like. It means erection in the male animal. And now, isn't that interesting? That is a second factor feeding back into this increased success with offspring business. Not only are you a better hunter, but you're a more highly sexed creature. And you're having more of what straight anthropologists refer to as successful copulations. An amazing phrase, actually. Meaning, of course, that impregnation is a consequence of this sexual activity. Now, the other thing that psilocybin does, at or slightly above this arousal level, and this is very important for the argument, is it causes what I call boundary dissolution, and boundary dissolution in human beings, like you and me, means ego loss. And I believe that this would have promoted a social and sexual style based not on monogamous pairing, but on orgy. The scenario is fairly easy to imagine. It's that these remote ancestors of ours would take these mushrooms and they, probably at the new and full moon, the thinking is that ritual was originally lunar timed, and then they would, and we're talking about nomadic groups of people, probably no more than 80 to 100 people, and then there would be group sexual activity. Now, an interesting social consequence of orgiastic social styles, besides a whole lot of fun, of course, is it's impossible to trace lines of male paternity in that kind of a situation. You see, women know whose children are whose because they see the child come out of their body and they nurse the child. But men do not, in that situation, have their children, my children. What they have are our children, the tribal group. And this boundary dissolving thing, let's dwell on this for a moment, because this is central to my argument, and it has political consequences for our own lives. All primates, clear back down into squirrel monkeys and lemurs, all primates have what are called male dominance hierarchies. And what this means is that the males with the longest claws, the hardest muscles, and the meanest dispositions take control of everybody else. Women, children, weaker males, everybody comes under the thumb of the alpha males of the pack. This is true, as I said, of squirrel monkeys, howler monkeys, so forth and so on. It is also true of us, sitting here in this room. this is a male-dominant society. I mean, there's a lot of complaining and hair-pulling about it, and there's a political alternative in the form of the women's movement and feminist sensitivities, but for most people, male dominance is the rule. Well, I would like to suggest that our peculiarly discomforted relationship to reality is a consequence of the fact that for a long period of time, perhaps as short as 20,000 years, perhaps as long as 1,000,000 years, as a species, and not consciously, we accepted into our diet a drug that had the consequences of suppressing male dominance. That this was the social consequence of accepting psilocybin into the diet. The ego is a structure that forms in the psyche like a calcareous tumor or a growth if you do not have regular recourse to the cure. And the cure is psilocybin and the boundary-dissolving sexual and social style which it carried in its wake. So the reason that we, as a people, are haunted by the idea of a lost paradise, a perfect world sometime in the misty past, is not, Mircea Eliade called it the nostalgia for paradise, and thought it was a kind of a longing that had no basis. But I think that it's entirely a memory of a period when male dominance was chemically suppressed, ego was chemically suppressed, and by male dominance and ego, I don't mean to lay this entirely on men. I mean, I would wager probably everyone in this room has more ego than they need, certainly starting with me. I mean, that's part of the paradox that you're supposed to enjoy in this, is, the ambiguity of me preaching the loss of ego. So essentially, what happened was a chemically driven leap in evolution as a consequence of the suppression of these behaviors that favored male dominance. As a species, we would have continued with male dominance forever had it not been for psilocybin in the diet. And it established a situation in which, in less than 2 million years, the human brain size doubled. This is, without contest, the greatest mystery in the whole of evolutionary theory. Lumsden, who is a brilliant evolutionary biologist, called the doubling of the human brain size in 2 million years the most spectacular transformation of a major organ of a higher animal in the entire fossil record. Well, now, it would be spectacular enough if it were the liver of an otter or the pancreas of an elephant. But notice that it is the organ which created the theory of evolution itself and all other theories. So that we're getting a little tautological here, folks. There's something fishy going on. What was it that caused this explosive doubling in human brain size? Well, I maintain that it was the new behaviors that emerged with the suppression of ego and their reinforcement in this situation of nomadic pastoralism. And that there was a period, let's call it from the melting of the last glaciers in Çatalhöyük, 6,500 BC, there was a period when men and women were in balance with each other, children and adults were at peace with each other, and human beings and the planet were at peace with each other. And then it was lost. And we fell into history You know, the long slog toward Armageddon is what was initiated in its place. Well, now, if it was so wonderful, why would anybody ever let go